Hi, and thanks for joining us with Agile and Nonprofits. I'm Diane Leonard, Chief Product Owner, and today I'm joined by Mark Peiffer, the Program Manager of Community Markets. Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Fantastic and caffeinated. So excited to get to
Good.
chat with you today because our circles have been overlapping. Agile, grants, all the nonprofit things. And so it's been really fun to see a bit of your journey as it relates to Agile. But before we get into any of that fun stuff, could you just tell everyone a little bit about your organization?
Sure. Yeah. So we started a little over a year ago, and community markets were located in Charlestown, West Virginia, the eastern panhandle of West Virginia. So basically in Maryland, Virginia. I mean, depending on where you are, I don't know how familiar people are with that, but they think mountains, but we're more in like the northern Shenandoah Valley, really, is where we're located. But our mission is to um, connect locally grown food to families in need. So we try to take the expertise brought by our board president, and he has a background in IT. So his IT company we work with in order to help bring technology solutions to farmers who really need it. So I can get into that more, but there's kind of a variety of veins that we're working on right now.
Well, and could you remind me and tell everyone when were you founded officially?
Yeah, it was last March, so it's just over a year.
Okay, so March of 21.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. And so new young nonprofit. What I'd love to have you share with everyone is what sparked your interest related to Agile and how that might help you as a new nonprofit organization.
Right. So it's kind of when I was brought on, so it was, the nonprofit was incorporated, founded in March of 2021, and then in April I was brought on. So the the IT company that we share office space with, they already were working through the Scrum and Agile framework. And so I started attending their weekly project sprint meetings. And so it was kind of in a way thrust upon me. There wasn't necessarily like a moment of just kind of sitting there by the computer or wherever out on a run and being like, oh, yeah, let's check out this Agile thing. It was something that when I came in and was brought on board, they said, okay, kind of go, we want you to learn about this. So that was the beginning. And I, searched Agile and read the manifesto and started learning about Scrum and the whole process and storyboarding and all that. So that's, yeah, that's how it all got started. It was kind of, in a way, handed to me.
Which is not always the case with all nonprofit professionals. As you say, like maybe it was on a run, right? You know me and my ideas when I'm out for like a jog. Um, that sounds more like a Diane story for sure. But when you think about where you started, so someone said, we're going to, and then you learned and thought about how to apply. Um, Now knowing what you know, where would you recommend another nonprofit professional start? Is there something that felt easier to understand or think about within the nonprofit context or an event or something about the values that stood out as, oh, this would have been a nice starting place had I had the choice?
Yeah, my I guess my mode of like research and info gathering is that I just sort of I put out like tentacles in very various places at a very high level, and I kind of look for where are um what are sort of like the broad strokes of whatever it is that I'm delving into. So that is kind of where I started. And I guess I thought about how would project management and kind of problem solving look from what I already knew, and then kind of take it from there. And then, okay, how does that kind of dovetail with what the Agile framework brings to the table? And then starting off with what I knew, then I was able to kind of move into Agile from that standpoint. So where to begin? I mean, a Google search, or if you know of someone who's already doing it, then, reaching out to them, um, getting in contact with yourself through grants, but then realizing that there's an agile side also of what you do. That was helpful as well. So, I mean, there's plenty of information out there on the internet, but then who do you know that might already be familiar with Scrum that could help kind of some of the finer points, help along with those. So that's kind of where, I don't know, those are the 2 cents I would give and where I started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So wondering if, as you've been on your Agile journey as it relates to the nonprofit to community markets, and then thinking about your board chair's organization and their IT, so more traditionally understood to be an Agile place, right? If you're thinking about software and tech development type work, are there times then where it's been helpful that you've been able to go to them and ask some questions? And does it translate what you're doing in a nonprofit and what they're doing in a for-profit? Do you find that there's some points of connection where you can have shared dialogue?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, with largely at the moment, we're looking and applying for grants for seed money to be able to kickstart and move forward with our programming. So, when you're looking at a project, whether it be a grant application or building out a program, using the Agile framework and the storyboarding and that all applies just like it would with a product. And actually, I've seen it with a nonprofit in both realms, because largely what we're trying to do programmatically, one of our projects is helping to build and host websites for farmers that otherwise, like, a lot of farmers don't have a back office and may not have the IT experience. So they want to be able to sell their goods, and we're trying to, through the nonprofit, provide website work for them. So I had to talk to the developers over on the for-profit side and talk through what is it going to take to get a website deployed and up and running for a farmer. So we had to work through, and with that project, I'm product owner of that. So, and that's a journey as well. I'm learning the finer points of what being a good product owner looks like. But, with the nonprofit wearing so many hats, Scrum easily applies, and the Agile framework, to whether it be grant writing or building out a program, or in this case, a program that involves IT software development sort of thing, which is where the Scrum framework and that all came out of initially.
Right. So I'm wondering, community markets doesn't know any other way. It actually makes me think of NewBoCo in Iowa when they were founded. They used Scrum and Agile values from day one. They never knew anything different.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about the impact that Agile and the Scrum framework have had on the organization, what's your soundbite? What's your this is the positive difference it's made? Again, knowing you don't have a comparison because you haven't existed. I think it's kind of cool any other way. But what would you say would be the big impact it's had on you?
Yeah. So while Community Markets as a nonprofit hasn't known, there was no I don't know, before Scrum, right? I have been in nonprofits previously in different capacities where there was no Scrum. So I can kind of, not looking at it from a program manager standpoint because I wasn't in those organizations, but knowing, I guess maybe maybe some of the inefficiencies that can arise from not having kind of everything out on a board and everything kind of in the open, and kind of the everybody working kind of to move stories along. I guess that's one of the things I've experienced, is that to not have everything out on the table like that. Maybe ideas can live more in the head of individuals and not really getting out to everybody on the team so that everyone in their capacity can't work to their maximum efficiency, because there's no maybe visual representation of a project that's helping, everybody be on track. Everybody knows where everybody else is, and just the impact and efficiency that all creates. So I've seen kind of both, and kind of as a different case study, this will never happen, but it would have been interesting to see like the organizational like cultures that I was in previously, what would have happened had Scrum been implemented there, right? And like knowing kind of what I saw and what I experienced in different places that I was, okay, what would Scrum do to that, right? How would that change? Where would the impact increase? Where would the efficiencies be, multiplied? That sort of thing. So I guess that's what comes to mind to kind of answer that. So I guess seeing how those organizations were now coming to community markets and saying with the Agile framework, it doesn't have to be that way, right? You can have all of the whole project visible and everybody can know what everybody else is doing. And that can really help avoid some of the pitfalls that I experienced in the past.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I've worked in lots of nonprofit offices. Had I known about Agile and Scrum then, try not to dwell on it. Great work was still being done, right?
Yes, absolutely. But right.
Was it at a sustainable pace? Were heroic things being done? Was there any burnout happening, right? Those are the things, or to your point, just even basic inefficiencies or duplication of work, not harnessing someone's amazing skill because they're not sure if it is a priority or not. Yeah, there's a lot. And
sure, miscommunication. I mean, it kind of, the list goes on and on. Yeah, it
does. But you and I were talking earlier about sustainable pace, which is a particular soapbox of mine. When I think, but here in a different context here for today. So when I think about young nonprofits getting started, and when they reach out and they're talking about grant funding or they're reaching out to learning about project management, there's an underlying story of there's so much to do. And it's usually one or two core people driving something like this at the very beginning for a nonprofit. Would you say that, and no pressure that you have to answer one way or the other, but would you say Agile, the Scrum framework, is it helping your young nonprofit to help the team operate in a sustainable pace environment? Or is that an area where you're still growing? Any candid thoughts you have about that as a young nonprofit, I think would probably resonate for people to hear.
Sure. I do think that it certainly does have a positive impact. I think if we kind of maximized implementing the framework, then perhaps we would see greater efficiencies. But yes, I mean, without a doubt, it's helpful. And I think it's very little time investment. I mean, you can go down all sorts of rabbit holes of what you can learn about the Agile framework, but I do believe with a little investment, you can learn a lot. And then the impact is very readily accessible. You can start seeing impact very quickly. So yes, I mean, we have it's myself as far as a nonprofit, but then I work with the developers over on the for-profit IT side. And it is a small team, but yes, I mean, there's definitely benefit, and there's definitely a place for it with even a very small nonprofit. So yes, I mean, check it out, check out Agile, check out Scrum, learn about it, see if it can benefit you. And I think it can a lot.
That's it. I agree. And I'll get on that soapbox at any time. One final question. If you had to recommend one website, one book, one thing that has been one of your favorites as a resource, I should say, what comes to mind? Where should people go? What do you want them to read?
I mean, go to the source. That's always kind of a good research rule of thumb. So certainly the manifesto. I intend to read. I see that red book on your shelf behind you. I haven't, what's it creating? Twice the impact in half the time. There we
Yeah,
go.
Dr.
Okay.
Sutherland's book. Yep, Art of
So,
Twice the Work in Half the Time.
right. So I'm going to call myself out here. I have yet to, and I shall, but I have yet to obtain and read that. But I've heard many a good thing about it, and that's certainly where I want to continue my journey. But I can't think of the website. There was, when I was first introduced to Agile, I was sent by the Scrum Master that I was talking to it might have just been, we use Jira, so it might have been Jira's website, but they kind of had some helpful informational videos of like, here's what a Scrum Master is, and here's what a product owner is, and here's what a sprint looks like, and just the various aspects. And I found that fairly helpful. I know there are other, if you are going to use an online software, like there are certainly other ways of doing Scrum than Jira, but that was kind of what kicked me off. So I found
That's great advice.
Yeah, little bite-sized videos. I found those to be helpful to get me going.
Yeah, well, we'll put the links in the chat. So you're right, agilemanifesto.org. You can read the whole Agile Manifesto in free download of many language options. I'll add Scrum guides, so scrumguides.org. Get the full 13-page PDF of the Scrum, like the rules. But I think you're on to something. Yeah, I mean, okay, if Dr. Sutherland's listening, or JJ, current CEO of Scrumming, we love the Red Book. You don't have to read the Red Book, though, to do a great job, right? Okay, they would agree. Scrum Guide, know that. But the tools, Jira, Miro, Mural, ClickUp, Asana, Trello, I could keep going, right?
Right.
They all do an amazing job of putting out resources that aren't only selling their tool, but walking you through in little clips. And they're free resources and just little bite-sized things. And so I think that's fantastic. Like young nonprofits, not a lot of time, but trying to learn. It's a really great spot to look. I'm so glad that you suggested that.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and certainly worth the time investment. Very little time investment. And yes, our time is very, pressed as far as, being a young nonprofit, but it's certainly worth the investment. And those little videos are just so helpful.
Yeah. Well, you have just become your own video that will be helpful to other new nonprofits.
Look at that.
So thank you, Mark, for joining me for this conversation today. I can't wait to see how you continue to use Agile to create twice the impact in half the time.
I can't wait either. Yeah. Thanks, Diane. Appreciate it.